Welcome to the Mom Existence, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm back in the freezing cold. I was in Florida for 2.5 weeks, which I actually, we had changed our flight twice. So we extended. And let me tell you, I do not want to be back in reality. Okay. I just don't. Especially with a toddler, I think with the baby, toddler, children in general, being in a warmer climate is just easier. It is so much easier to get out of the house, into the car. Everything is just brighter and you feel more vibrant. You just do. My wavelengths were higher, let's just say. And now I just feel like a bit anxious. I don't know if it's just post-vacation blues. I think that is definitely a thing. And I just don't feel comfortable in my routine again yet. Let me know if you can relate, because this is a real struggle for me. I would just have let my husband go home and where I can work remotely a little easier than he can at times. I would have just stayed there. There's so much to do. We were in Florida and outdoors, it's endless with a child. Their indoor play places we hit up once, also 10 out of 10. We need more of that shit here in Nova Scotia. I'm so sick and tired of like the insane jungle gyms that we have where a parent needs to physically be there to lift or support or spot your child. Like, why can't there be a little more easygoing, joyful play places for children that parents can enjoy too? And if there are some and I'm not aware of them, please let me know, because I don't know, I just feel anxious. I think it's being out of routine, enjoying that, now being home, trying to get my son, who yesterday just turned 2 years old. Shout out to my little sweet boy, Cash. I cannot believe it. But I feel just not at ease at being back in my own space. I don't know if it's just me, but trying to get there. And obviously the lack of sunshine definitely does not help. I'll survive, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with you all. And I'm so excited about this week's episode. I interviewed Joyce Brewer, who is down in Atlanta. So she is probably not feeling this cold. When we talked, I know they were in that, like a snowy kind of cold, weird weather way that went through there, but hopefully it is sunny and lovely where she is. And Joyce is actually an Emmy Award winner journalist, and now she is a parenting powerhouse. She is the host of the Mommy Talk Show. Follow her on Instagram. She's so funny and lovely. I felt like we had a conversation that two friends would have. It just felt so open and so easy. She is absolutely lovely. We talked about her transition and launching the Mommy Talk Show, the realities of what it's like to be a woman and go through perimenopause, how she knew what's happening to her body, what it was like for her experiencing mom guilt and how she still deals with that and also balances her career and her work, her parenting in general, her husband, her relationship, her self-care, all the things, and kind of how she has grown her platform into what we see today. She's also got a fabulous YouTube channel as well. So definitely go over and check out Joyce. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review. That is very helpful for me. Leave a review, follow Joyce, and we will see you guys on the other side. Enjoy. Joyce Brewer, welcome to the Mom Existence.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for hitting me up in my DMs and asking me to be a guest.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. So I naturally found you because of your Instagram handle, which is Mommy Talk Show. And I was like, who is Joyce? What is she up to? And I saw that you won, not one, but 2 Emmys in your line of work too. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's huge.
Yeah, so like I try to explain to people in my pre-mommy life, I was a local TV news anchor and reporter. I've worked in Kansas City, Jackson, Mississippi, Youngstown, Ohio. When you're a TV reporter, you move around from different markets, and that's actually where how I met my husband. We were working together in Jackson, Mississippi, and I happened to be there during Hurricane Katrina. So our team won Emmy Awards for our coverage of the storm. And then I think it was like right after that, like the month after Katrina, it was my mom's birthday and I got us tickets to The View because I'm from New York originally. And this was okay, so this is '05. Meredith Vieira, Star Jones, Barbara Walters were still on the show. Yes, the original crew, the OGs were on the show. And my then boss emailed the producers and said, "Hey, one of our anchors is coming and we just finished, you know, having this storm coverage and this is she'll be in the audience." So I get to The View. You know, I had tickets, of course, because I worked at an ABC station, and the producer came up to me in the hallway. She's like, "Hey, we're going to put a mic on you. We're going to ask you a few questions." And Ashley, I think I blacked out for like 2 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
And then I was like, okay. They're going to ask me questions. And yeah, like during like one of the first segments, Meredith Vieira said, you know, one of our local news anchors from Mississippi is here. She just covered Hurricane Katrina and she asked me a question. So I got on The View as well, on top of earning the Emmy Awards.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Yes,
Isn't it
but I
funny
had
when
a huge stomach ache.
you're on the other side of the camera doing the interviewing? It's like, no problem. This is natural. And then when someone asks you one, it's like, yeah, shocking.
I know, like I got like a stomach ache. I was like, wait, okay. And then I had to like reset myself. I'm like, girl, you've done this.
Yeah.
Get it together, get it together, get it together. So it took a second, but it was amazing. And my mom got to meet Barbara Walters then because it was my mom's birthday, and Barbara Walters came out and introduced herself to my mom. So
Wow.
on top of, you know, meeting the crew, it was a great family and friends memory because I brought some friends too.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. So what took you, I guess, from that kind of more news career, anchor, being an anchor, into what you're doing now and being kind of more present on YouTube and social media in general?
Very simply, I got engaged, married, and pregnant all within 3 months.
What? Okay, in that order?
In that order, yes. So I got engaged in April of '09, married in May of '09. You know, this is a mom podcast. I had one period, and then I got pregnant. So we have a honeymoon baby. So we've been married now. Are we coming up on 16 years?
Wow.
And he is 15.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was working in Jackson, Mississippi. My then fiance, now husband, got a job here in Atlanta. And I got pregnant so fast and everything happened so fast. I was like, I cannot go back to that traditional grind of TV. Just being a new wife and mom and being in a new city, it was absolutely too much to comprehend. Mm-hmm. So when my son was about 10 months old is when I started Mommy Talk Show, which, you know, I intentionally was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this so that if I ever get back on TV, like I just have tape, you know, you have material. Everyone's always, you know, you got to keep stuff up. So that was my original intention. I never imagined doing things like being invited to Disney World, going on a Carnival cruise, that leading to other TV appearances and some of those things. Like my intention was just really simple, like have fun. But it definitely grew and morphed into more things. And now when I'm 14 years into the game of mom blogger life, and now my son is 15 and almost 15, and he does not want to be on camera, Ashley. So we've reached a whole other level.
Most teenagers, I am sure. What was it like when you first had your son in those first few months? Like, you're not in your city, right, with your family. So was that hard for you to just make that adjustment?
It was very, very hard. And shortly, and I think while I was pregnant, we found out my dad had lung cancer. So it was a struggle to, like I said, be a new wife, be pregnant, be in a new city. I'd left all my friends, a bulk of my friends that I met in Mississippi. I had to find an OBGYN. I had to find gynecologist. I had to find all of these things with like no network at all. So it was funny. Like I started going on, it's Meetup. And I found like some mom groups at the time. And there are women that I met in 2009 in some of the mom groups that are still my friends right now. And we are still on this motherhood journey. But it was really, really tough. I am not going to diminish it and make it seem like my pregnancy was all flowery and beautiful, because it was a struggle. Emotionally, financially, I'd gone from being a news anchor and making my own money to now being married and, having one income. It was a huge adjustment.
It's so crazy in so many ways, just emotionally, physically, financially, culturally, your life just shifts in like a blink of an eye. And I feel like you can prepare for the baby and bringing home the baby and maybe some of the things that will happen to you postpartum, but you're not really prepared for that, like that shift, that mental shift, right? Of like a new Joyce or a new Ashley. I found that the hardest part for me, and I did not expect that. And it was hard. My son's almost 2, so I feel like I'm just coming through the tunnel and seeing the light. But man, for the last almost 2 years, it's really hard to understand what life is going to go back to, or like your new normal, if that makes sense.
Very much so. That's why I feel like I have a pre-mommy life and like a post-mommy life, because the person I was and the things that I did, good, bad, or otherwise, but professionally was just so different than the person that I am now, thanks to my husband and son. I, wouldn't give them back for the world, but it was a definite shift. And at that time, the girls in my group, like my friend group, they did not have kids. Right. So I was one of the first ones in my group to have kids, or the girls that I knew that did have kids were far away. So that is just, there's nothing like having a friend you can call, a neighbor, someone who's like really close to you physically, miles away, that can be there and help you through those first couple of years of motherhood. It is really, really rough.
Yeah. I love that you still connect with those women that you met, because you guys are going through all the same stages. Like relatively, I'm assuming your children are around the same age. So if someone else has a son the same age and your son, it's like, okay, like just your son's a teenager now, doesn't want to be on camera. So I'm sure like every child does not want to be, mostly probably on their parents. Like social media, right? Like they're happy to do their own thing, but they don't want to consent to what mom's doing. Mom's not cool. I don't know.
Well, he's like, if my friends find your Instagram, I'm gonna die. And I'm like, some of your friends already follow me, and you haven't died.
And like
stop
they think
over
I'm
exaggerating.
cool. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Exactly. But like you mentioned, those friendships. Like one of my friends. Like I told her the other day, I was texting her, I'm like, can you believe, like, we have been in it since before these kids started walking, and now we are teaching them to drive. She has 3 and I have 1, and she has 1 driver, and I'm giving my son driving lessons. And it's so crazy because I'm like, I remember peeing on the stick and finding out you were coming, and now you are a whole human. You ask for the car keys. I've let him drive up our street and turn into the driveway. Like the fact that he is just this whole person. He's so autonomous. He's so, he doesn't need me the way that he used to. And let me tell you, that's heartbreaking too. So you better cherish this 2-year-old stage friend, because when he's 12, he's going to look at you like, and who are you? Why do I care? And all of that. It's so different. Now I feel like my son, it's very hot and cold. It's either I know everything or I don't know anything. That's the way he looks at me, versus your 2-year-old, I'm sure thinks you hung the moon.
I know. And I want to put that in a capsule and keep it forever. Doesn't mean I want to have 7 or 8 kids, but I just think, the innocence and obviously it can be very draining and stressful with how much they depend on you in the beginning, but it's kind of beautiful to see them grow. But I will miss that of like he can put his own boots on, but I love helping him get dressed and do, those sorts of things. And I know everyone says that and I hate it. It's like, it's so cliche, but it's so true.
Well, and I heard the other thing, another cliche I heard is like, the days are long, but the years are fast. Because I remember some days when my son was your son's age. And, either you missed a nap or the snack went wrong, and that like set off a
Oh, it
whole
does.
day of turmoil in your life. And you're like, so now we're not on schedule, and now nobody's going to go to sleep at night, and, or just whatever. Versus the fact that my son is in ninth grade. Like, he's in high school. Like, we are going on college tours,
Wow.
Ashley.
That's crazy.
So let me tell you, cherish it. And I feel like I did. And I'm so grateful that I did have a parenting blog to go back and look at these stages in his life when we were, the fact that I was doing preschool posts and now I'm doing, high school. And
The crazy thing is, I've
gosh.
reflected on this now that I have a son, and I have an older brother. He's engaged, but they don't have children yet, if they decide to. But it's interesting to think about like a grandparent and a grandparent's role, because now I understand why they cherish it and love it if they get to do that someday, because it's like you love your child so much and that experience that you almost, I don't want to say you get to redo it, but you get to relive it in some aspects. So I totally understand if Cash has children someday. I would be like, and I'm lucky enough to be alive, that I can kind of relive some of those little moments and those joys in a different light, a new perspective. But I honestly was thinking about that. It's very strange, but I thought about that the other day, how much joy it brings my parents and other parents, that it's interesting to think about, like being able to kind of like sink your teeth into that again.
Yeah, and then they get to play with them and mess with them and do whatever, and then hand them back to you.
Peace
So then,
out.
right, and then we're doing
not
like
doing night
you're trying to
shift.
exactly, and then you're trying to do the snack, like you said, you're trying to tie the shoes. Like I remember, I told my son, I'm like, it was so hard to get him up to weighing 30 pounds. This kid would get to like 25 and then he'd stop, and he was like in the lower percentiles, all these things, the weight of a child, like you're worrying, is he getting enough protein, is he getting enough this, is he getting enough that, and now he's like 126 pounds in high school. Like,
All works out.
I think about, yeah, I'm like, it does, but when you're in the thick of it, it seems like, am I ever going to get out of this phase? And let me tell you, you do. And you know what comes after that? Another phase.
Yeah. Teenagehood.
Or middle school, even worse. Middle school was terrible.
No. And it's so hard now as a parent, especially you're in Atlanta, right? Atlanta? Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
we're
was
in
like, I didn't
Atlanta.
want to say Georgia, but I'm like, are you specifically in Atlanta? But I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada, in Halifax. And it's scary in general to raise a child, whether you're in the States or in Canada, just like with social media and all the things that are happening just around the world. And I'm like, it's scary to raise a child. But I think a teenager and an adult, I don't think it gets any less stressful. There's like new guilt or new stress that kind of comes with each stage.
And I think my son, I think he has this like sort of nostalgia for the 80s. Like he'll watch 80s movies.
Like
and
it was
he'll
100
see
years ago.
Right. But he'll see how much independence kids have and how they just
Interesting.
got on their bikes and rode around and did this and did. And he's like, you don't let me do that. I'm like, I would never let you do a lot of the things that I did. Like even him and his friends, they wanted to go to the mall. They're 3, 14, and 15-year-old boys. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to make sure at least one parent stays by. I'm not saying the parent has to hover, but there's a parent at the mall. So if something happens or you guys need us, someone is there. And he thought it was the strangest thing. But when I was 15, my parents surely dropped me off at the mall.
It is.
And
It's a different world. It is a different world in every sense.
right. And I told him, I'm like, something could happen totally outside of you guys. That's the scary thing, is like you have to almost think of the worst case scenarios. And it bothers me because I want him to have, a childhood like mine, but it's not going to be the same. And I'm like, you need a parent there. You need this there. These are the things that we as the parents, agreed, feel comfortable with. So deal with it. I'm like, I also didn't have a cell phone when I was your age.
True. We know too much, son. We know too much. You can't outsmart us. No, but you're right. Okay, so 80. I'm an 80s baby. I was born in 87, so I'm 37, turning 38. And Joyce and I have been talking a little bit through our DMs, getting to know each other on some levels before recording. And something else I talked to with Shayna I guess like over a month ago now, but we started talking about perimenopause because this is a reality for women in their 30s, mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s, whatever, that is a reality. And I think that I was under the understanding, I just came to this conclusion myself, that some of my period related issues were like postpartum issues, right? Like heavier, way heavier periods and just some more, like some new challenges, let's just say. But now as I'm learning more about the word perimenopause, I'm like, oh shit, maybe this is perimenopause. And I honestly didn't know until I had that episode and then doing some of my own research that like this is a thing. This is an unavoidable thing.
It is a huge thing. And I think, I did a skit on my Instagram with menopause, a conversation between menopause and perimenopause. And I feel like menopause has a better PR team than perimenopause. Like
Yeah,
everyone knows that
absolutely.
menopause is when your period stops, you can no longer get pregnant, hot flashes. Like those are the three things.
Totally.
No one talked to me about perimenopause. I think I read it in an article or something. I read it online. I can't even believe like my OBGYN didn't say those words to me. And I was like, wait, we have symptoms before menopause that still include heavy bleeding, like you say, a lot of the menopause symptoms, and just general anxiety, depression, just not feeling like yourself. And the fact that this can start in some women's lives in their 30s and last more than 10 years. I'm like, perimenopause needs to be on every billboard everywhere. And women need to know about it. And women need to ask not just their OBGYN, but their primary care doctor about it and talk to their therapist if they have one about it. Because all of those people on my team, my primary, my OBGYN, and my therapist all know that I am in the throes of perimenopause. She is kicking my butt daily. And that's another reason why my son doesn't want to be on my Instagram. He's like, you're on there talking about perimenopause. And I'm like, this is what my audience wants to hear.
This is my life. It's so true. Like, I think that women are underserved greatly in so many ways in healthcare, like beyond. And now we're only studying women's bodies to the extent, and now we're only talking about it. It's like, actually, I'm surprised, but not surprised. It's one of those things. But I feel like you hear as a child when you're going through school, maybe from a parent or a relative, about like your period, you're very primed to kind of like understand what that might be like. And in school they teach it, but like where is the love for perimenopause? There's none.
Not only that, and I wish I could find this doctor's TikTok. I found it a couple of years ago. She was an OBGYN, and she even pointed out that most OBGYNs, they focus on getting a woman pregnant, keeping a woman pregnant, and delivering a healthy baby. So little of their education in medical school focuses on perimenopause or menopause. So unfortunately, the doctors that we're trusting, they're learning right along with
Like
us.
they're not studying it or being, like
Exactly.
that's crazy.
It is absolute, and it's such a disservice because.
And don't you think that people are thinking, or like men or just people in general, like, oh, now they're coming up with perimenopause. Now we have to talk about all this other shit. Do you know what I mean? Because our bodies are so complex, and we go through all these stages as women, right? To have a baby, or you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, let's give some more attention here.
I mean, there may be some men who are. Thankfully, I did not marry a man like that. When I, have had very honest conversations with my husband, and when I get a book from the library or something, or I get an article, you know what I do? I hand it to him. Because I say, listen, we're in this together. You are stuck with me through all of my phases, through all the ups and downs, and otherwise. And it's important for your partner to know. And it's important for your friends to know. When I see a new article or a new something, or there's a movie, or, a Halle Berry interview. Halle Berry has been very outspoken. She went to Congress last year advocating for more research about menopause. And every time I see something like that, I tell my friends who are my age and my friends who are a few years younger than me, because they may be going through, a different set of symptoms than I do. And it's important for us to not let the women behind us feel lost, because whether you're a mom or not, whether you, had children naturally, IVF, whether you adopted, whatever, if you are a woman and you get to your 30s and 40s, you are going to experience perimenopause. And if you get to your 50s, you're going to experience menopause. And some women who've had surgery, and have their ovaries removed, they get thrown into menopause medically because of hysterectomies and things like that. So this is something that like I said, I wish I could scream it from, the rooftops. The police would probably come get me, but I would if I could.
I mean, you can try and let us know. We'll scream it here. So what did you just start to have like some signs that started creeping in, and did you consider it could be perimenopause, or were you confused and talked to your doctor or therapist or your husband or whoever?
I think it was a combination of just not feeling like myself. Like that's the easiest
Mentally,
way.
physically, or both?
Mentally, physically, emotionally. And my periods were wonky. And, you get the menopause belly. Like some women, your waistline gets bigger. I feel some inflammation in some places, and maybe it's a little bit more than just being in a funk or having a bad day. It's different than that. It is like fundamentally looking at yourself, the way you do things, the way you used to do things, and saying something is off. Something is wrong. I'm not who I used to be. I don't look how I used to look. I don't feel how I used to feel. I don't say the things I used to say. I am a little bit more snappier.
I have heard that there's a little rage that happens. No, I haven't heard that about you, but I just
right. Because I've said things and my husband and son, they just stop and then they look at each other and they're like, she's about to go. Like she's about to, or she's had it, or they just, they have like an internal meeting with their eyes and they're like, she's about to kill one of us. It's happening. Back away from the perimenopausal woman. Just back away from her.
And do you recognize that? Like when you feel that, are you like, shit, I don't feel like myself? Like you don't have control over those emotions?
Oh, very much so. I mean, like my temper is definitely shorter, but it's also just part of being a woman and being a mom. And I'm like, I've said this 15 times. I've asked you 15 times to do it this way and to not do it this way, and I explain why. And then when I go off, then it's an issue. The times you ignored me weren't an issue, but now this is an issue. Then my reaction becomes the issue.
Yeah.
So, working on those things, communicating those things, saying to both of them, I'm sorry. I know I'm snappy. I know I'm upset. I'm going to go lay down. That's the other thing I do. I take naps.
You need a timeout.
I'm 51 and I'm going to go put myself into a timeout. I'm going to close the door. I'm going to watch a Law and Order marathon. Y'all can bring me snacks and wine and chocolate. Otherwise, don't open this door.
Don't bother mom.
They learn don't poke the bear, I think is the thing that they say behind my back. Don't poke the bear.
Good. As long as they know, Joyce. They know. So you were starting to feel like these emotional breakdowns, a little bit unsure of what was happening, why you were, feeling or looking a certain way. So were you like, doctor, what is this?
Yes. And I started researching hormone replacement therapy for all of these. And I started researching what a lack of estrogen can do to you. And estrogen is so fundamental to everything from our hair to our toenails, literally everything in between. So right now I'm experiencing like a lot of my eye runs a lot, like just teary eye. I talked to my primary care doctor. She's like, that's perimenopause. What? You feel a runny nose? It's perimenopause. My nails are brittle, more brittle than they ever were, no matter how many vitamins I take.
Wow.
Of course, people know hot flashes. People know mood swings.
I heard like itchy skin
periods.
too. I feel like that's like a thing. Itchy skin.
Girl,
that happens?
itchy skin. Like I layer moisturizers on, layer lather. I use a body wash, I use a moisturizer, I use a cream, I use all of that, and I will still be up at 3 o'clock in the morning like this.
I had that postpartum. I remember being, I don't know if that was a hormonal thing, but I remember being like so itchy, my legs and my arms. So like, shit, I don't.
And itchy ears.
Ooh.
Itchy
Inside?
ears are something like your like
Oh,
here,
like
like
your top lobe. I don't know what that's
your
called.
lobe, your whole
Oh
earlobe.
gosh.
And there was another thing that I mentioned to my primary care doctor. I said, I'm bumping into things. I leave the bathroom, I bump into the door.
Like if you're disoriented?
She said it's something with I thought it was like, is it my equilibrium? Because I don't feel unstable. She's like, your brain is doing so many things. It's spatial awareness.
Okay.
That's what she said. So you're not spatially aware. So yes, this door that has been in this house for the 4 years I've lived here isn't going anywhere. I know it's there, but I'm not aware of my proximity to the door. So that's why I bump into it.
Crazy.
And
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
all of these things are perimenopause and menopause, and no one talks about them. No one. It is just such a disservice that, you know, like you said, we as tween girls, it's period, get your period, monitor your period, regulate your period, you know, use tracking your period so you can get pregnant, then tracking your period after you're pregnant. And then no one talks about it until like your period just stops one day. Well, there's a lot that's in between there. There's a huge, vast gap of a woman's life that does not involve pregnancy, but it sure as heck involves hormones and perimenopause and menopause.
It's kind of reminding me of when you're postpartum and you're going through a hard time, what if it's physically, mentally, both, whatever it is. And until you're in it and you start talking about it and researching it, you're like, oh, I'm not alone. This is a thing. Other people are feeling the same way. But you don't really, it's not like in the peripheral, you don't know about it. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing. So it's like we're just always led to outsource these things ourselves, or until you're in it and it's like, okay, why? You want to be educated almost, right? Like in some respect. So you may see signs earlier. Maybe you can look into hormone replacement therapies or going on the birth control if it's safe for you to do whatever it is. But it's interesting because it does. There's another mom podcast I follow, The Mom Room, Renee. She's in Ontario. And she's talking about this. She's turning 40 and she's already seeing these symptoms. And she's like, why are we not talking about this? And it's like, everyone's talking about it once it happens, but there's no like primer for, you know, things to look out for. And I feel like it's very strange as a woman. I can't even find the words. And I think that a lot of the symptoms, and it's probably because we haven't been studied in certain ways like this, that we're all so different and the symptoms are all so different that it's like you could experience that dry skin, someone else might not. They might just have, I've heard cold flashes. You don't just have hot flashes, but you can have like where you're cold. So our hormones are just so like, it's incredible what our bodies can do, but it's also kind of scary that we don't know these things.
And I think, like you mentioned with postpartum, I remember reading Brooke Shields' book, Down Came the Rain, I believe is the title. And I read that when I was pregnant because I was like, okay, this is someone who experienced this and I want to know what to look out for. And I think you brought up a really good point, is knowing what's ahead. So it's important for women in their 20s and 30s to know that this is on the horizon, you know, that these changes are possible and these changes can look, like you pointed out, very different for very different people. All of the symptoms, they could be all of the symptoms, it could be none of the symptoms. Because I'm also in groups of women over 50 and there's women who are like, oh, I feel fine. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, you want to go over to her house and punch her in the face, but you know, that's illegal. So, but there are varying degrees. And I think for me, in my case, I have much older sisters. My sisters are actually in their 70s. So they don't look at it the same way. They're like, oh, they don't remember it. And then my mother has passed away. So I don't have her really as a resource either. I remember her having hot flashes. I remember sitting across the dinner table and she would just be drenched.
You're
And I'd
like,
be
why
like,
is
oh.
the air conditioning on right now?
Yeah, like she would literally be doing everything and then she'd just start taking off her clothes. Like if she was home, just taking everything off because she's in the midst of a hot flash. But it's so much more than that. And I think in some ways, actually, I think women are sometimes programmed, sometimes, not always, to diminish our symptoms and not make too much of a fuss.
Absolutely.
And I have learned that what bothers me is going to have to bother everybody that's in my circle because we're in it together.
Well, and to your point about your sisters who are older and like the generation, you know what I mean? Like people didn't talk about that stuff. I can remember someone
Yes.
saying to me once of like baby boomer generation, like there seems to be a lot more miscarriages now. And I'm like, no, there are not. People are just talking about it. So you hear about them. They were certainly at home alone dealing with this and
Yep.
suffering, right? So I think it's kind of that whole like era is kind of being phased out and we are understanding, well, the only way to get through this or to learn more is to talk about it and support one another through it.
And I sometimes think about like, was my mother just like a superwoman? Because I never
know.
heard her complain. She did all these things. She woke up before us. She went to sleep after us. She worked full time, got us to all the places that we needed to be.
And you don't
And I'm
remember
like,
any like distress around it, right?
I don't think I cannot recall as a child ever seeing my mother be sick or take a sick day or say I'm going to go lay down the way that I do now. She was just some super force
Do you
person.
think
But
that's
I also
that's not like my mom is the same way? But I'm like, is that a disservice that we, I'm learning about a bit of how to like talk and parent in like whatever way a
yes.
toddler and how to, if you're upset, like don't hide things from them and tell them like everything's fine, but they can read that, they feel it, they understand, but you have to like obviously age appropriately explain things to them. But it's like we shouldn't really hide our emotional things, our difficulty things, because how are they going to understand how to like deal with these things when it happens to them? Because they're going to your point, think like no one else did this happen to, or like my mom didn't deal with this stuff, right?
I think my mother, I think she probably felt a lot of what we felt, but she didn't have Facebook. She didn't have text messages. She didn't have, mom groups.
TikTok.
She was
I hear TikTok's back in the States.
Oh yeah, it is. She didn't. I don't like these women. These women that I think we have like canonized and adored. They felt it. They just didn't have an outlet for it, and they probably didn't feel. And they were definitely instructed not to let their children see certain things. And I struggle with that now. I've lost my mom, and 12 years before my mom died, my dad died. And my son was only one and a half when my dad died.
Wow.
So a lot of what I felt, he didn't remember or can see. But this time, he was 12 and a half when my mom died, 12, 13. Oh, yeah, she died right after his birthday. Right after his birthday. So he's watching me, Ashley, call people on the phone to notify them that my mom has passed. And then people, and right, wrong, or otherwise, then you have to console them because now they're reacting. And you know what my son said to me? He stood at the top of the stairs. He said, "You need to get off that phone." He said, "You need to stop doing that. You need to stop." And I said, "I hear you, and I know you don't like it making me upset, but I have to do this. I have to call these people." But to him, all he saw is my mother is crying.
Yeah. Make it stop.
Make it stop. He was like, he wanted to like take the phone out of my hands. But, that's a struggle too. I mean, your son is young, and there's going to be a time when you're going to be like, am I going to let him see this part of me, or how much am I going to let him see? How much is he going to remember?
And you also don't want them to think like you can explain it, but I think my mom would have protected me in the sense of like, I don't want her to think it's her fault or there's something,
Right.
I'm crazy because I'm crying and I'm weak. You know what I mean? These things that are kind of a bit more ingrained in us, but it's hard. I think that most of the time, hopefully we have that gut instinct of like what we should do and how we should handle it. But like, we're not always going to get it right.
That's true. And I'm not sure that I got it right in that case. And I'm not sure I get it right most days. I think I'm doing what I think is right at that moment. Because I do my best not to let my son see me cry unless I absolutely cannot, because you don't want to I don't want to upset his world, and I don't want him to think things are that bad. But at the same time, things are bad sometimes, and I'm 51, and sometimes I don't know what to do, or I get overwhelmed with the memories of my parents, or we just had to sell my parents' house where my family lived for more than 50 years. Like the house that my parents brought me home from the hospital to that house and was there. And that was rough. It's like your nest is gone. That's the way I can explain it. Imagine like your nest is just gone.
Mine's gone.
But to have it for so long and to always have my parents there. And I know that it is someone else's, it's another family's time to make memories there. Like my brain knows that, but my heart is like, girl.
There's so much wrapped up there, right? Like that I feel like our homes that we know or knew are just special. Like I always joke, I want to go back and buy my childhood home someday just to feel that moment. But maybe it's better to have those as memories and hold on to that, and would never feel the same to go back and not be the same way. You know what I mean? But
yeah, I totally know what you mean. But it's a struggle. It's hard. My son, and then he lost his other grandma. And I'm telling you, that's another level of raising kids through grief, of your grief and their grief and your spouse's grief.
Right.
And still having to make dinners and do assignments and get to school on time. That's just another level of parenting. It's another level of being. And I think, after experiencing this level of grief, it changes you. Absolutely. It changes you forever. The same way you mentioned, people with miscarriages, I've had friends who've had miscarriages. I had a friend who had a miscarriage when I was pregnant with my son, and I felt so bad. She didn't tell me till afterwards, but I could imagine what that was like for her to listen to me while I'm experiencing the joys of my pregnancy and her pregnancy is lost.
Yeah, no, it's hard. I love social media for so many different ways, and sometimes, especially on the Mom Existence page, I follow basically strictly like parent, mom, women content, which is nice because it's so curated and like a lovely place. But occasionally I do come across very, very, very traumatic or very sad stories where a loss of a child, or the parent when the child was very young, stuff like that. And I'm sitting there, like the other night, I was home alone. My husband was gone. Cash was sleeping. And I was like bawling, because when you become a parent, it changes everything literally in your being. And when you know what that feels like to love something so much or be in that position, it like literally rips your heart out. So it's just like, I don't know. I can't imagine. Grief is hard.
Yeah, it's rough, and different things trigger different things. Because my mother, you guys get Kelly and Mark up there in Canada, correct?
We do, yeah.
So my mother has been a long time fan, back when it was Regis and Kathy Lee, and then Regis and Kelly, and then Kelly and Michael, and then Kelly and Ryan. It's every Kelly. Iteration of it. Yeah, she's gone through it. So my mother was a huge fan. Like she actually went to the show several times in all of those iterations. And it was like probably the week my mom died was the week Mark got made as host. And my son said, he's like, I bet you God is letting grandma.
Did she like Mark? Because he used to fill in all the time.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I mean, we have Mark Consuelos is probably the most beautiful man.
He is. And in the world. He has $1 million smile. Like they both do, but he is beautiful.
I mean, not only does she have a great job, but she goes to sleep next to that man every night. So, sister, I'm in awe. She gets all the respect in the world. But I'll never forget, Mark had just been named host, and then he started, And my son said, he's like, I bet you God called grandma down and said, Elaine, you can watch TV today because Mark is on the show. And I'm like, she probably did. She probably went to God and was like, listen, I know we might not get all the channels up here, or y'all get different channels, but I'm going to watch me some Mark Consuelos
every day
today.
for 1 hour. That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, but things like that, or when Kelly was talking about, they have an elder dog, and I don't have pets, but I have friends who have pets, but I know what their pets mean to them. And Kelly was talking about, her older dog is like 18, and they're talking about, when is it time and all that. And I'm sitting here crying, watching this show.
Things hit different. Things hit different.
Talk about her dog.
Yeah. There's like like you get tapped in emotionally when you become a mom to things like, even I was at a cafe doing work near our house and my son was at daycare that day, and there's a school nearby, and I saw these, like, I don't know, they were probably between 7 and 10, but they were going and they were getting cookies at this coffee shop. I don't know if it was recess or their way home. And I was like, look at those sweet little boys. I'm like, I just love that. Like, before I would have just been like, whatever, like there's some kids coming in, making some noise while I'm working. But instead you just like, you can just like feel things differently when you see kids or around kids. And like, I love when I go to pick my son up at daycare, I like love talking to all the kids in his class. I know all their names. And I'm like, I don't know. It just like changes you and makes you, not everyone, this is not a universal thing, but like for me, absolutely.
And then, okay, so do you plan to grow your family? I know that's a very personal question.
No, I don't mind.
But...
I feel like now that I'm kind of, he has, a spot at daycare, which is here a bit harder to do because most of it is like part of our, like a system. So there's only so much room for kids. So now that I can kind of like breathe again and sink into work and have time, then I'm like, okay, like now I can feel a little more like myself. And you're out of that like thick of the fog. I would like to, I think, but like I'm getting older, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I hate the word. There's a word that just, I don't know if they use it there in the Canadian health system, but here they call it a geriatric
I knew
pregnancy.
You were going to say that. Yes, they still call it. I was geriatric 35. I was 35.
Yes.
So 35 and over. Like, come up with a better name.
I was 36 when I had my son, and when I go back, I saw that term on my mammogram sheet. It still said geriatric pregnancy, and I wanted to find somebody and punch him. But I've seen miraculous things. I've heard of miraculous things. I mean, yes, those terms are used to describe us, but I don't think that fully encapsulates who we are or what our pregnancy experience has to be. I mean, my son was wonderfully healthy. I did have a C-section because I'd had a previous surgery for uterine fibroid, so I had a, picturesque as a C-section could be is what I had. And now he's absolutely wonderful. So, it goes by, like I said, I can remember peeing on the stick. I can remember calling my mom to say I'm pregnant, and she started laughing. I can remember.
She's like, you just got married. You just got married.
Yeah. I'm like, everybody's going to be counting. That's what I told him. Like, everybody's going to be counting. They're going to be counting. And she's like, who cares? I'm like, yeah, you can say that now. If it had been a few months different, you would have had an issue. But
it is a hard decision thinking about like growing your family, or just like, I'm like, one is so nice and you finish these stages and then you're like done with them. But then something else is like, are you done with them? It's really hard. I don't know.
But then it would be, yeah, I mean, my husband is an only child and my son is an only child, and I have 3 siblings. So I think about like later in life, like he's really going to be on his own.
Does he have cousins? Are there cousins?
Yeah, we have cousins, but they're not, geographically close. Right. So we see each other at holidays, but it's definitely not the same. So that's something to think about. I mean, you and your husband have to make those decisions, but that's what I think about in hindsight. I'm like, he'll be by himself, but I'm like, but then he'll have, a chosen family, friends and loved ones.
If
and
he's in a couple, then that
with.
Becomes, an extra extended family, which is beautiful also. But okay, one thing I want to talk about before we wrap, Joyce, is a little bit about mom guilt. Because I know your son is getting older and you are still busy. You're blogging, you're a mom, you host your show. It's like, how has that changed over the years? And is it worse? Is it better? Is it more manageable? Like, what does mom guilt feel like to you now?
Well, I'll answer that, but I gotta tell you a funny story first because I did a quick little Instagram
I
reel
did see
about
that.
mom
Yeah.
guilt. And my son, but let me tell you, when I was done, I was shot in my bedroom, and my son came around. He goes, "What's mom guilt?" And I'm like, "See, that's what it is. It's something we do to ourselves." Because he could not even understand what I was talking about. He was like, "What
Interesting.
is?" And that's what I'm saying. We make ourselves feel guilty because to him, I haven't done it. She hasn't done anything to feel guilty about. He looked at me like I had three heads. And I said, "That's it right there."
Yeah, reality check.
The reality check. He said, "What's mom guilt?" Because, when they're little, it's, do you breastfeed? Do you give them formula? Do you send them to daycare? Do you stay home? Do you,
Give them a
I don't
smartphone.
know, do you do the certain kind of shoes, whatever expensive kind of shoes they need to wear to walk versus letting them walk around barefoot and figure it out? Then, like you said, so then there's everyone else got a cell phone when they were 12. He didn't get a cell phone until he was this age. It is never freaking ending, Ashley. So I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. It's never ending, but I also realize it is self-imposed. So when I do have clarity, when I'm not snipping at my husband and son, when I have a moment of clarity, when my hormones are
When I'm
properly
not
balanced,
napping. Yeah.
when my hormones are properly balanced, I try to remind myself that, I'm literally doing the best I can at this moment. And to compare my child to other children or to compare siblings or any of those things is a disservice to them and a disservice to ourselves because we're all going to choose different things and we're all going to do things a different way. That's why they make variety packs, right? They make variety packs of chips. They make variety packs of tampons. They make variety packs of everything. So choose whatever works for you and do that and stand in it. Because just like I told you, the mall thing with his friends. So it's him and his two friends from church. The three moms were in a chat. And one mom, she felt fine, leaving them at the mall. And I didn't. So I said that. And then the other mom didn't say it until later. She's like, "Oh, I should have, backed you up on that." And I said, "Well, even if you didn't, I wasn't going to change my mind.
Right.
This is what I decided. So it was going to be what it was going to be." And if he would have had to miss out on it because someone chose otherwise, that would have just had to be it too. Because my mother used to say, every tub has to sit on its own bottom. You make your bed hard, then you got to lay in it. So you have to be happy with yourself and your own decisions. I'm not saying that you're not going to feel the guilt, but at the end, your spouse, your care team, whether that's grandparents, nannies, daycare workers, whatever you all decide is best, is what's truly best.
That is true. There's so much, even like we were talking about social media, it's like there's so much noise out there that can be blinding. But you start to realize as you get more comfortable in listening to that intuition or that gut and understanding what you need or your son needs or your children need, that's going to feel good for you, and you don't really give a shit what other people are going to do. And it's like a muscle you need to keep practicing and using
Right.
it, because it is easy to fall into some of these like traps or agree. My parents were like the strict parents growing up, and my best friend Stacy and our moms were best friends. So my parents moved to this small town. They happened to be neighbors. Very small town. You kind of stick with the people around you that you can. And it was like, "Oh, can I do this? Can I go to this sleepover?" Mom's calling Stacy's mom, asking. Darlene's like, "Well, if you're saying no, I'm saying no." So it's like if she wasn't allowed to do something,
Ooh.
I wasn't. But they probably found power in that. And then Stacy and I didn't feel alone, because it's like, well, we can't go to that party. We'll just come over and
Right.
we'll watch a movie or do whatever. But I don't think there's anything wrong with setting, you set boundaries really clearly for children and toddlers, then children, and then teenagers. You have to keep practicing it and being kind, but there has to be very clear boundaries.
Exactly. And, I'm going through this thing now with my son. Like I said, he's about to be 15. So we're going through this back and forth phase of he says something and I say something. And then he says something. And then I said, that's the end. That's the end of it. I'm putting a period at the end of this sentence. I'm 51. I've been here much longer than you have. I said, me and your dad know some things. Contrary to what you think, we're not stupid. We're not. You know some things, like he helped me with my mic today. Now my son is my tech support. I'm not going to diminish him from that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the tides have changed because when he was 2, I had to help him do things. And now I'm like, okay, just make sure this mic is on. Did I do this the right way? I hadn't set this up in a minute. And there are things on my phone that, yes, I ask him to help me with. But generally, when it comes to your well-being, I'm talking to him, your well-being, your health, where you go, and who you do it with, that is up to me.
Yeah, until you do not live under this roof. Yeah.
Right. And even then, if I'm paying the bills, I still get to tell you what to do.
Exactly. It's kind of like the area of expertise. It's like, okay, you know how to help with your phone or your tech, like that's you. But like with the period and the end, like that's the end. It's like I am the resident expert on probably 99.9% of the things in this house. I can remember my parents saying things like that and it being so annoying and like you'd be so irritated. And not that you think that you necessarily know better, but you're just like, I don't know. Being a teenager is rough. For both sides.
And I don't diminish that. And I know being a teenager is rough, and I know it's in their nature to push back. But I know, the way I was raised and the way my husband was raised is, democracy is outside this house, over there, like the front door, and all of that is democracy. Everything inside is not democracy. Like you don't get a vote.
It's a dictatorship here.
It's a dictatorship. We are the rulers. Yes. Until you go get your own, legacy and place to govern. We govern this, everything in here. And then you get your own governance and then you go govern that over there. But yeah, this democracy stops at the front door. That's another thing I like to say.
Yeah, that sets the tone.
You can borrow that one.
There's a whole new government where you are, like as of 24 hours ago. We won't get into that.
Don't trigger me.
But I keep forgetting. I'm like, oh, right. This happened. Anyways, yeah, that's a whole bucket of worms. We will not even a can. It's a bucket. Well, this has been so amazing. And Joyce, for people listening, if they want to learn more about you and kind of follow you, where's the best place that people can do that?
I would say the Mommy Talk Show Instagram page is something that I update way more than I update my blog. So you can follow Mommy Talk Show on Instagram, where I have those funny reels about perimenopause and menopause.
More to come, I hope.
More to come. And, occasional appearances by my son where I have begged, borrowed, gotten him to look at the picture, then approve it. Then I can post Ashley. Like there's steps to this now. So that is one of the places that I probably share the most with my viewers, with other moms, especially moms over 30, moms over 40, because there's something about getting to know yourself as a person, as a woman, and getting to know yourself as a mom. There are definitive things that you go through in your 30s, 40s and 50s in these phases. The same way our children are changing and growing, we are changing and growing as women. And I'm open to that. And I'm open to those discussions of women really being honest with themselves and asking those questions. I ask myself that question all the time. What am I doing? What is going on here? Half the time I don't know. I'm making it up as I go.
We're just here trying our best. I can remember my mom, I'll leave everyone with this, saying to, if I were questioning things or being a little snarky, she would say, I've never done this before. This is my first time being a mom. Ashley, I don't know. And I was like, you're right. Like now I get it, you know, but it's not, I
Right.
always think like reflecting now, I'm like, that was funny. And she was absolutely right. She doesn't know, just like we don't know.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's absolutely true. Absolutely. And I tell everyone, to cherish your parents, to really, really, really cherish your parents. To have no parents at the age of 49 was, a definitive jarring moment for me. And then to have to mother Ashley with no mother. That's the thing for me. Like, I wasn't done needing my mother, and my son still needs me.
Yeah. That you could do like a whole series on that.
Girl.
Well, if you are going through perimenopause or grief or have a teenage son and you want to connect with Joyce, send her a little DM, and I'm sure she's happy to chat.